Put him down. Right now, Alina." His voice cracked through the quiet like glass shattering. The baby jerked in her arms, startled by the shout. "Sir Adrian, please," she stammered, trembling. "He was crying for so long." "I said put him down." The words cut like knives. She lowered the baby carefully into the crib, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. The child whimpered, sensing the tension that hung heavy in the room. Adrian's jaw tightened, the storm still raging behind his eyes. "You're here to clean floors and polish silver, not to touch my son. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," she whispered. "I'm sorry." The apology barely left her lips before he turned away, running a hand through his hair, frustration spilling from every breath. The baby began to cry again, but this time Alina didn't move. She stood there, tears welling up, whispering so softly only the baby could hear. "I'm sorry, little one." The mansion was silent, except for the echo of the child's sobs and the rain against the tall windows. Alina backed out slowly, head bowed. She had been here only 3 months, yet every day felt like walking on glass. Everyone feared the man who owned this house, Adrian Walker, the billionaire who built an empire out of precision and pride, and lost his smile the day his wife died, giving birth to their son. Since then, he trusted no one, least of all strangers. Alina's world was the opposite of his. She came from a small town where people shared soup when money ran out, where kindness was a language. When she took the job, she promised herself she'd be invisible, work quietly, never make mistakes. But that crying, every night it tore through her like thunder. It wasn't a sound she could ignore. Later that evening, the housekeeper cornered her in the hallway. "Alina, you've got to be careful. He fires people for less than that." "I know," she said, eyes red. "But the baby, he cries for hours. He just wants to be held. That's not your place. None of us touch him." Alina nodded, but the ache in her chest didn't fade. That night the cries started again, soft at first, then desperate, echoing down the marble hallway. She pressed her palm against the nursery door, whispering to herself, "Just a minute, just until he sleeps." The door creaked open. The baby's cheeks glistened in the dim light. She lifted him gently, whispering, "Shh, it's okay, little one." The moment she held him, he stopped crying. He blinked up at her, calm, as if he knew her scent, her heartbeat. She hummed a lullaby her mother used to sing when nights were cold and food was scarce. Within minutes, the baby drifted to sleep against her shoulder. She smiled through tears, unaware of the small bracelet he tugged at, her silver bangle, now bent slightly out of shape. Morning came. Adrian walked into the nursery and froze. A faint pink mark stained the baby's blanket. Lipstick. His chest tightened. He called for the staff. Everyone lined up in silence. "Who touched my child?" he barked. No one answered. Then his eyes fell on Alina, the tiny bracelet on her wrist, bent, unmistakable. "You," he said, stepping closer. "Did you enter this room last night?" Alina's throat went dry. "Sir, please, he was crying." "You had no right." His voice rose, echoing off the marble. "You think because you work here you can ignore my rules. Do you know what I pay you for?" "To clean," she whispered. But I couldn't listen to him cry like that. He needed someone. He needed no one. Adrian slammed his palm on the table, startling everyone. The baby began crying again in the next room, but Adrian didn't move. The sound pierced Alina's heart. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "You're finished here." "Sir, please, I said leave." She lowered her head, whispering through tears. "Yes, sir." As she walked away, the housekeeper caught her arm. "Alina, I'll try to speak to him. Maybe he'll calm down." "No," Alina said softly. "He's right. I crossed the line. But you didn't mean harm. Sometimes intentions don't matter to people like him." She smiled faintly, but her eyes glistened. "Tell the baby goodbye for me." Hours later, she folded her uniform into her bag. The baby's soft cries echoed again from upstairs. She hesitated at the doorway one last time, whispering, "I wish you never had to cry alone." Then she stepped out into the rain. In his office, Adrian sat behind his massive oak desk, staring at the monitor that displayed his son's nursery. The baby's tiny fists waved helplessly. For a long time, Adrian just watched, unmoving. Then something flickered. Regret, maybe guilt. He remembered Eleanor's last words before she slipped away. "Promise me he'll never feel alone." He pressed his hands to his face, but pride wouldn't let the tears fall. Downstairs, the housekeeper entered quietly. "Sir, she's gone." "Good," he muttered, but his voice cracked. "She broke my trust." "Or maybe," the woman said softly, "she was the only one who kept it." Adrian looked up sharply. "What do you mean? That baby stops crying only when she holds him. I've seen it. He knows her. Sometimes hearts recognize each other before words do." She turned to leave, adding, "She left something on the kitchen counter. A photo." He frowned, walking down the hall to the kitchen. On the counter lay a small, worn photograph. In it, Alina stood beside a hospital crib, smiling weakly, a newborn in her arms. His eyes narrowed. The baby looked familiar. Too familiar. He flipped it over. Written in faded ink. "For my boy, you were born to be loved." His heart stopped. He stared at the image again, the same birthmark on the baby's shoulder as his son's. His hands began to tremble. "God," he whispered, voice breaking for the first time in years. "What is this?" Thunder rumbled outside as he stood frozen, the photograph shaking between his fingers. The edges were worn, the ink faded, but the truth in it screamed louder than the storm. His heart pounded as he stared at Alina's face in that picture. The gentle smile, the newborn in her arms, the birthmark that matched his son's. The room seemed to shrink around him, his breath shallow, disbelief crashing into him like waves. "No," he whispered, voice trembling. "What is this? Who are you really, Alina?" The lightning flashed through the window, and in that flash his reflection stared back. A man about to learn that everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and truth was about to change forever. Adrian stood frozen in the kitchen, the photo trembling in his hands. The storm outside roared louder, wind shaking the tall windows, matching the storm inside him. His breath came sharp, uneven. He looked again at the photograph. Alina, tired but glowing, holding a newborn with a tiny mark on his shoulder. The same mark his son had. He whispered to himself, "It can't be. No, it's impossible." But the handwriting on the back, soft, curved, written by a hand that cared, felt too real to ignore. For the first time in years, fear crept through the heart of a man who thought he controlled everything. He picked up his phone and called the housekeeper, his voice trembling. "Where did she go?" "She took the 5 p.m. bus, sir," came the quiet reply. "Said she'd head back to her old neighborhood." "Which one?" She didn't say. He hung up, grabbed his car keys and walked out into the rain. The city blurred by as he drove. The streets were slick, lights flashing across his windshield. He'd spent years building walls around his house, his life, his heart. And now one picture was breaking them all down. He pulled up outside the old bus station, scanning the crowd, soaked through his expensive suit. There, near the corner, a woman with a small bag and tears running down her cheeks, clutching something close to her chest. "Alina!" he shouted. She turned, startled. Her eyes widened, fear flickering across her face. "Sir Adrian? What are you doing here?" He walked closer, rain dripping from his hair, his voice tight. "I found the photo. You owe me an explanation." Her lips trembled. "Please, not here." "Then where?" he demanded. She glanced at the small shelter nearby. They walked under it, the sound of rain drowning the space between their words. Adrian's eyes were burning. Who is that baby in the photo? Alina took a shaky breath. My son. Your son. His voice cracked. Then why does he have the same birthmark as mine? She looked down, tears mixing with the rain. Because they were born the same day, in the same hospital. My baby didn't make it, sir. He stopped breathing an hour after birth. Adrian's anger faltered. I don't understand. I was in the same ward as your wife, she whispered. She was kind to me. We talked for hours while we were in labor. She said she was scared, said she'd do anything to make sure her baby lived. I didn't even know who she was until later. When my boy... Her voice broke. When my boy was gone, the nurse held him for me. I heard your wife crying down the hall. The nurse said she wasn't doing well. I prayed for her. I still remember her face, smiling through tears, telling me that babies bring light, even through pain. Adrian's hands fell to his sides. The rain pounded around them, but his mind went quiet. The pieces didn't make sense, yet they did. The connection, the way his son calmed only in Alina's arms, her lullaby. The look in her eyes when she held him, not pity, not charity, but something deeper. He whispered, barely audible, You knew him before I did. She shook her head. No, sir. I only saw him once. I didn't even know he was your child until I started working for you. But when I first heard him cry, something inside me broke. I couldn't walk away. For the first time, Adrian didn't have a response. He just looked at her, the woman he'd scolded, belittled, fired, standing there drenched, shaking, holding back years of grief that matched his own. The sound of the baby's cries echoed in his memory, each one now a plea for the truth he'd been too blind to see. He finally said, softly, Come back to the house. She blinked. Sir? Please, he said, his voice breaking. Come back. The drive home was silent. Alina sat in the back seat, staring out the window as raindrops traced paths on the glass. Adrian's reflection looked pale in the mirror, haunted by guilt. When they arrived, the house felt colder than ever. The baby was still awake, fussing softly in his crib. Adrian walked in slowly, his shoes clicking on the marble. He stopped a few steps away, frozen. Alina stepped closer. The baby looked at her, smiled weakly, and reached out tiny fingers toward her. She hesitated, then looked at Adrian. He gave a small nod. She lifted the child, and as soon as she did, the crying stopped. A soft coo filled the room. Adrian felt his chest tighten, his throat ached. Alina kissed the baby's forehead gently. See? Just wanted to feel safe. Adrian whispered, He knows you. She smiled sadly. Maybe he feels something I can't explain. He sat down slowly, burying his face in his hands. I've been so cruel. To you, to everyone. I thought protecting him meant keeping people away. I didn't realize I was the one making him feel alone. Alina placed the baby back in the crib. Pain makes us do things we don't understand. You lost your wife, sir. That kind of loss, it doesn't heal easily. He looked up, eyes red. And you lost your son. Yet somehow you still gave love. She hesitated. Because love doesn't die when someone does. It just finds another place to go. The words hit him like lightning. He stood slowly, walked toward the crib, and gently brushed his son's cheek. The baby looked up, smiling. For the first time in months, Adrian smiled back. Not the polished smile he wore for the world, but one full of cracks, truth, and release. He turned to Alina. You should never have to leave this house again. Sir, I can't. You're not my maid anymore, he said firmly. You're family, if you'll stay. Alina's lips trembled. You don't have to do that out of guilt. I'm doing it because my son needs you. And maybe I do too. She looked at him, heart heavy, unsure whether to believe it. The mansion was still, except for the soft hum of the rain outside, and the baby breathing peacefully. She smiled faintly, whispering, "Then I'll stay. For him." He nodded, his voice soft. For him. That night, as the storm cleared and the moonlight poured through the windows, Adrian stood by the nursery door, watching Alina hum the same lullaby, the same one his wife used to hum when she thought no one was listening. His heart clenched, and for the first time in years, he let the tears fall. He whispered to himself, "Maybe kindness doesn't need blood. Maybe family isn't always who we're born with. It's who chooses to stay when everything else falls apart." And yet, beneath the calm, one question remained. The photo, the mark, the strange connection. There was still something left unsaid, something Alina hadn't told him. Morning sunlight slipped through the tall windows, soft and golden. The storm had passed, but the air inside the mansion still carried the weight of what had been said. Adrian barely slept. He spent the night pacing the nursery, replaying Alina's words again and again. Something about that photo, that mark, the strange pull he felt toward her, it still didn't add up. He wanted peace, but truth doesn't rest until it's told. Alina entered quietly, holding a bottle. "He's hungry," she said softly. The baby reached for her, gurgling. Adrian smiled faintly. "He always knows when you're near." She sat by the crib, feeding him. "Babies feel hearts more than words," she said. He watched her for a long moment. "Alina, yesterday you said your baby didn't make it. But that photograph, there was something written on the back. It said, 'For my boy, you were born to be loved.' That wasn't a note of loss. That was a promise." Her hand paused. "It was a promise," she whispered. "To who?" he asked quietly. Tears gathered in her eyes before she even spoke. "To him, and to her. To my wife." She nodded slowly. "The night we both gave birth, everything happened so fast. I heard your wife screaming. The doctors ran back and forth. I was alone in my room, holding my son, praying he'd breathe just a little longer. When the nurse told me your wife wasn't going to make it, I asked to see her. I don't even know why. Maybe because I didn't want her to be alone either." Adrian's breath caught. "You saw her?" "Yes," she whispered. They let me stand by her bed for a moment. She was pale but awake. She looked at my baby and smiled. I told her my son's heart was slowing, that I didn't think he'd survive. She cried with me. Then she asked the nurse to bring her baby closer so I could see him. They looked almost identical, both so small, so fragile. "Your wife." She touched my hand and said, "If I don't make it, promise me both our boys will know love." Those were her last words to me. Silence. Adrian felt every beat of his heart echo in the room. "Both our boys," he repeated under his breath. Alina wiped her tears. An hour later, my son was gone. I begged to hold him one last time. I sang to him, the same song I sang to your son last night. That's when the nurse whispered that your wife had passed. 2 mothers, 2 babies, 1 living, 1 gone. I think that's why I felt him before I even knew who he was. Somewhere inside, I never stopped keeping that promise." Adrian covered his mouth, trying to hold back the sob that rose in his throat. He turned away, tears breaking free. "All this time, I treated you like a stranger." "You were grieving," she said softly. "So was I. Grief makes strangers of us all." He looked back at her, voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't want anything from you," she whispered. "Not money, not pity. I just wanted to make sure he was okay, that he'd grow up feeling what both his mothers wanted for him. Love." He walked closer, kneeling beside her. "You kept my wife's promise better than I did." Alina shook her head. No, sir, you kept it too. You just needed someone to remind you how. The baby let out a small laugh, breaking the heavy air. Adrian smiled through tears. He's laughing. He feels peace, Alina said. Babies always do when hearts forgive. He looked up at her, voice unsteady but warm. You're not just part of this house anymore, Alina. You're part of him, part of us. She hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, he said, standing, holding the baby in his arms for the first time without fear. Because family isn't about who we lose, it's about who stays to love what's left. The baby rested against his chest, small and quiet. Alina smiled, wiping her tears. Your wife would be proud, she whispered. Adrian looked out the window, light falling across his face. Maybe she sent you here, he said softly. Maybe she knew I couldn't do it alone. Months passed. The mansion, once filled with silence, now echoed with laughter, tiny footsteps, lullabies, the sound of two hearts healing together. Adrian still ran his empire, but now he came home early. Sometimes he'd find Alina and the boy in the garden, sunlight painting them in gold. He'd stand at a distance, smiling, realizing that sometimes the richest man in the world is the one who finally learns how to love. One evening, as they tucked the baby into bed, Alina whispered, He's growing so fast. Adrian nodded. So are we. She looked at him curiously. What do you mean? I used to think strength was never needing anyone, he said. Now I know it's letting the right people in. She smiled softly. That's what your wife meant, I think, when she said both your boys should know love. He glanced at her, tears glinting in his eyes. Now they do. He turned off the light, standing quietly by the crib. Thank you, Alina. For what? She asked. For reminding me that money can build walls, but love breaks them down. Outside the night was still. The rain that once symbolized anger now whispered peace against the windows. The baby sighed in his sleep, safe and warm. Adrian placed his hand on the crib, whispering one final line that hung in the air like a prayer. Sometimes the people we push away are the very ones sent to save us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Black Saga, tap the bell for more true-to-life emotional stories, and drop a comment about what moment hit you the hardest. Like the video and share it with someone who needs to remember that kindness can change everything.